November 1932. A time when the world was still reeling from the Great Depression and the shadow of another world war loomed on the horizon. The sun rises over Western Australia, casting a golden hue over the vast farmlands. The serene landscape belies the chaos that is about to unfold. Farmers brace themselves for the invasion. The enemy is fast. The enemy is relentless. They have faced droughts and pests, but nothing could prepare them for this. The enemy is a large, flightless bird. Yes, this is real. Emus are the adversaries. These birds, standing over 6 feet tall, are formidable. Australia actually went to war with emus. It sounds absurd, but it happened. Soldiers were deployed armed with machine guns to combat these feathered foes. And spoiler alert, they lost. The emus emerged victorious. Despite their best efforts, the soldiers were outmaneuvered by the agile birds. But this wasn't just any war. It was a bizarre conflict, a surreal chapter in history that defies belief. This was an absolute disaster, a complete and utter failure. The emus proved to be more resilient than anyone had anticipated. A battle of man versus nature, machine guns versus birds, a surreal confrontation. The emus, with their speed and agility, outpaced the soldiers at every turn. And most importantly, the Australian government versus common sense, a true clash. The decision to wage war on emus remains one of the most peculiar in military history. This is the Great Emu War of 1932, a historical oddity, a tale of hubris and unexpected defeat. The emus, it seems, had the last laugh. Before we dive into the chaos, let's set the scene. Picture this, a vast, rugged landscape, untouched and wild, stretching as far as the eye can see. It's the early 1930s, a time of great turmoil and uncertainty. The world is reeling from the aftermath of the Great War, and the economic landscape is bleak. Like the rest of the world, Australia is deep in the Great Depression, grappling with widespread poverty and unemployment. The streets are filled with people desperate for work, and businesses are shuttering their doors. People are struggling, businesses are collapsing, and Australia's economy barely holding together by a thread. The air is thick with despair and uncertainty. Now, a few years earlier, the government had what seemed like a brilliant idea, an idea that was supposed to bring hope and stability to the nation. Hey, what if we gave free farmland to returning World War I veterans? A noble gesture to honor their service. These men had fought bravely, and now they would have a chance to build a new life. Great, right? A win-win situation. Veterans get a fresh start, and the land gets cultivated. It seemed like a perfect plan. A way to kill two birds with one stone. Except the soil was awful. It was dry, unproductive, and far from ideal for farming. The land was harsh and unforgiving, not the fertile paradise they had hoped for. They were given no farming training or assistance, left to fend for themselves in harsh conditions. These veterans, who had faced the horrors of war, now faced a different kind of battle. And, 20,000 emus were about to ruin everything. These large, flightless birds were about to become the farmer's worst nightmare. Every year, emus migrate across Western Australia in search of food, a natural phenomenon. They move in large flocks, covering vast distances in their quest for sustenance. And in 1932, they found it. Right in the veterans' wheat fields, a veritable feast. The crops that were supposed to bring prosperity were now attracting a different kind of attention. Now you'd think 20,000 giant birds showing up uninvited would be bad enough, but the reality was far worse than anyone could have imagined. But no, this was an ecological apocalypse, a disaster of epic proportions. The emus trampled the crops, leaving destruction in their wake. The fields were left in ruins, the hard work of the farmers undone in an instant. The lies, the chaos, the emus. They broke the fences, creating discord and havoc. The barriers meant to protect the crops were no match for the determined birds. They ate literally everything, leaving nothing behind. The fields were stripped bare, the crops devoured by the ravenous emus. And somehow rabbits got in and made it even worse, adding to the farmers' woes. These small but destructive creatures compounded the devastation. Yes, this war had a rabbit-based side quest, an unexpected twist in an already dire situation. The farmers were now battling on multiple fronts. The farmers, understandably losing their minds, begged the government for help. And the Australian government, they had one solution: send in the military. The stage was set for an unprecedented conflict, one that would go down in history as the Great Emu War. Breaking news: Australia has declared war on birds. Yes, you heard that right, birds. In an unprecedented move, the Australian government has decided to take military action against these feathered creatures. And so, in November 1932, the Australian military deployed. A Major Gwynedd Purvis Wyn Aubrey Meredith was tasked with leading this unusual campaign. 2 Lewis machine guns. These were state-of-the-art weapons at the time, designed for human warfare. 10,000 rounds of ammunition to fight birds. Yes, you heard that correctly. The military was prepared for a full-scale battle. Yes, emus, these large flightless birds, were the enemy. Machine guns for birds. The absurdity of the situation was not lost on anyone. The first battle, November 2nd, 1932. The soldiers were ready for their first engagement. The first engagement happened near a dam, where about 50 emus were spotted. The soldiers opened fire, and the emus, they scattered. The birds were surprisingly agile. See, it turns out emus are biologically built for war. Their natural abilities made them formidable opponents. They run 50 kilometers per hour or 31 miles per hour. This speed made them difficult targets. They zigzag when chased. This erratic movement confused the soldiers. And somehow they know how to dodge bullets. Their survival instincts were remarkable. Only a few birds were hit. The emus proved to be elusive targets. The rest vanished into the bush. The emus had outmaneuvered the soldiers. The humans had lost round 1, and the soldiers were left frustrated and defeated. The second battle, a few days later, the military was determined to succeed. The soldiers found 1,000 emus in an open field. This was their chance. They waited. The emus were unaware of the impending attack, lined up the perfect shot. The soldiers were ready to strike, and then the gun jammed. Disaster struck at the worst possible moment. By the time they got it working again, the emus had disappeared. It was a disaster. The Great Emu War was proving to be a formidable challenge for the Australian military. The emus had won again, leaving the soldiers to ponder their next move. The Great Truck Chase, a desperate plan. After multiple failures, the military panicked. They came up with a brilliant new plan. What if we mounted the machine guns on moving trucks? Yes, their master plan was now 1. Drive fast. 2. Chase the emus. 3. Shoot them mid-chase. And you know what happened? The roads were too bumpy for aiming. The emus outran the trucks. And at one point, a gun broke off the vehicle. These birds were untouchable. After 2 weeks of embarrassment, the government gave up. Final stats: total emus killed 1,000, total bullets fired 10,000, bullets per emu 10. Victory? Absolutely not. Major Meredith later admitted, if we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world. The emus were too much for the military. The Great Emu War remains one of history's most ridiculous military failures. The Australian government tried one more attack in 1934. They failed. Again. Eventually, they gave up and just built better fences. And to this day, the emus remain undefeated. Now, what did we learn from this? 1. Nature always wins. 2. Guns don't solve everything. 3. If a war breaks out and your enemy is a bird, just go home. To this very day, emus remain Australian icons. They're even proudly featured on the Australian coat of arms. So the next time you see an emu, show some respect, because you're looking at a true war hero, a war hero that took down the mighty Australian army. Never forget the Great Emu War. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more obscure history. What's the wildest scam you've ever heard of? Let me know in the comments, and I might cover it next.